Hello, this is Alan Brooks, and today we're going to be talking about another New Discovery subject. Today we're going to be talking about America. Is America in the Bible? You know, I've heard all my life, and I'm sure you have as well, that yes, America's in the Bible. We're Babylon. We're evil. We're the whore of Babylon, spreading our evil ways all around the world, and therefore we're going to be destroyed because we're so bad. I know that's what I've been taught. I'm sure you have too. But is that what the Bible really says? Well, first of all, America is what she is, but is she Babylon in the Bible? Well, is there a place we can go to find out just who the whore of Babylon will be? We all have heard about Revelation 14, 17, and 18. It says there, Babylon is fallen, and we think that's America when the Antichrist finally strikes us down. But is it? Is there any other place that we can confirm the identity of the whore of Babylon? Well, yes, there is. Isaiah 15 through 22 speaks of the Antichrist invading the Middle East on his way to Israel. And Isaiah 21, very interestingly, speaks of the Medes as part of this invasion force. Now, who are the Medes? Those are the peoples near Iran, which is basically what I found after 30 years of research, that the whole Bible predicts one story, that there's a northern Shia invasion force of the Medes and other nations, perhaps Russia, perhaps Turkey. They're going to sweep down through the Middle East, and they're going to take over the Sunni nations of Jordan, Iraq, North Africa, and then Egypt, and then they're going to sweep back up and in a surprise attack Israel to start the day of the Lord, which is why Paul said the day of the Lord happens when people say peace and safety, which is why Ezekiel 38:11 says Israel will be a peaceful and unsuspecting people when the Antichrist invades her. You see, people, what the Bible really says is not that the Antichrist is some Jewish person who everybody will think is the Messiah and then suddenly will betray them. No, the Bible says the Antichrist is someone called the Assyrian who leads a Gentile army on the day of the Lord during peace. And so the real picture the Bible presents is that during a peace, there's an attack of the Shia northern invasion force upon the Sunni nations. It's sort of like ISIS. And imagine a northern force from Russia and Iran and other nations attacking ISIS and then taking over Saudi Arabia and Iraq and perhaps Libya, North Africa. And then coming back, they'll act like they're coming back home. It says that in Daniel 11 and Ezekiel 21. And then as they're coming back home, in a surprise, they attack Israel, which is precisely why the Bible says the day of the Lord happens when people aren't expecting it. It's an invasion of Israel when people say peace, Paul says in 1 Thessalonians 5, 1 through 3. It says that in many places, Jeremiah 4, 6, Ezekiel 38, that when people say peace, peace, it's not a real peace, it's a false peace. Why? Because there's a 7-year peace treaty of Daniel 9:27, and in the middle of that peace treaty, or at the 3.5-year mark, the Antichrist, a Shia northern invader, will sweep through the Middle East and then act like he's going to go back home. But then in a surprise, he attacks Israel. So that's just a little precursor to what I found in the Bible. But getting back to our subject here, is America in the Bible? The reason I brought all that up is that everybody says America's Babylon, but it says in that same invasion, sweep through invasion description in Isaiah 15 through 22 that the Medes attack Saudi Arabia and Babylon as part of this sweep-through invasion. So, and it says there, amazingly, Babylon is fallen in Isaiah 21, which is the exact word-for-word phrase of Revelation 14 and 17 and 18. Babylon is fallen. So, you know, word for word is pretty powerful. So I think that the real picture is that Babylon is, well, Babylon. It's not America. It's not Hollywood. It's not New York City. It's Babylon. And that's the real picture the Bible presents, is that the Shia force sweeps down and attacks Babylon. So I'm just dispelling the urban legend we've all been taught that America's Babylon. So anyway, I'm sorry. Let's get back to America. Is America really in the Bible? Well, I found yes that it is. One of the discoveries I made, not that I'm great, because I'm not. I'm just a person who studied the Bible a long time because I've had some illness issues. I discovered that the Bible presents end-time prophecies. It'll present a description of a prophecy, and then it'll redescribe or repeat that prophecy. It's sort of like a movie flashback. It would be like if I had a movie, I made the first scene about Pearl Harbor, and then a few scenes later, I did a flashback and represented the scenes of Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor would not take place twice. It would only take place once, but it would be presented, and then there would be a movie flashback. So why are you telling me this, Alan? This is really far afield, isn't it? Well, the reason I'm telling you is that Ezekiel 7 through 11 is like the first movie scene. It talks about, like I said a minute ago, the day of the Lord happens when people say peace. It says, on the day, peace is sought. But the worst of the Gentiles, the Antichrist, will bring a destruction to Jerusalem, and then Jerusalem and Israel will have to flee to the mountains. And if that sounds familiar, it's exactly what Jesus said. He said that when the disciples asked him, what are the signs of your coming and of the end? He goes, well, Israel's going to be invaded by the Antichrist, and they're going to have to flee to the mountains. And so again, and Paul said, the day of the Lord happens when people say peace, and the day of the Lord is a destruction. A destruction where? Israel. So, okay, getting back to Ezekiel 7 through 11, it's the first movie scene. On the day, peace is sought, but it's not found. The worst of the Gentiles will bring a destruction to Israel, and they'll come in and defile the temple, and Israel will have to flee. You see, and that's exactly what Jesus said. He said, when you see the abomination spoken of by Daniel, Israel will have to flee. The abomination is what? It's a defilement of the temple. So you see what I'm saying here? The first movie scene is on the day there's a false peace, and the worst of the Gentiles will bring a destruction, and Israel will have to flee. And then Ezekiel 11, the last of this little loop of information, it says, the glory of the Lord Jesus comes and stands on a mountain east of Jerusalem. Actually, Ezekiel 10 says the glory leaves the temple in heaven, and then it comes and stands on a mountain east of Jerusalem. And if that sounds familiar, it's exactly what Zechariah 14 says. It says that Jesus will come back and stand on a mountain east of Jerusalem. So again, it's word for word. So we see here one picture of the end of time, and it cannot be denied that the last 3.5 years, or the Great Tribulation, or the time of Jacob's trouble, will start when people are saying peace. It'll be the worst of the Gentiles invading Israel. Israel will have to flee, just like Jesus said. And then this Antichrist will rule for 42 months, but it's not said here. You know, all these prophets didn't have every single piece of every part of the information, right? And then 42 months later, Jesus Christ, the glory of God, will stand on a mountain east of Jerusalem. So that's the first movie scene, if you will. And so the second repetition, or the repeat of the same scene we just saw, is found in the next 5 chapters. Amazingly, it's really the movie flashback. Again, we're flashing back to when there's a false peace. It says, false prophets say peace. Jerusalem will become desolate, which Jesus said, when you see the abomination or the Antichrist invading Israel, Israel will become desolate. And then there's these judgments upon Jerusalem: sword, famine, her lovers burn her. And her lovers are the ones she signed the false peace treaty with, okay? And then at the end of this little loop of information, Ezekiel 17 is what we're talking about. It talks about the branch, or Jesus comes back and stands on a high mountain. Again, you see how it matches Zechariah 14 and Ezekiel 11? It's the same picture, people. You see, I found a little phrase that God taught me, which is the same. God uses the same words and phrases throughout the same Bible. And again, this is pretty obvious here that at the end of time, Jesus Christ will come back and stand on a mountain east of Jerusalem. Okay, people? It's clear. So that last part is in Ezekiel 17, which, if we can go there, it talks about this. It talks about what I believe is America. It talks about Ezekiel 17, 1 through 4. It seems to speak about an eagle coming to the Holy Land area, and this eagle takes a young twig from the highest branch. And what does this mean exactly? Well, Isaiah several times refers to Jesus Christ as the branch. And the eagle, who could that be? Mexico? Iceland? No, in the world today, America is the eagle nation, right? So to me, this seems to be a metaphor about America, that somehow America will be started by Christians. The highest branch is clipped off and taken to America. And then Ezekiel confirms that. He goes, it'll be carried by this eagle to a land of trade, a city of merchants. And of course, one could conjecture that the eagle here is the United States, as that's our national symbol. And America's probably known as the land of trade and traders and merchants, right? So I'm not too far afield here. That's very logical. And this eagle clips off this branch and carries it to this land of trade, the United States. And this, like I said, it could be referring to the pilgrims who came here to start America, and it was started by the Christian religion, and our nation's known as the eagle. And then Revelation 12 seems to confirm this. Revelation 12:14. When the Antichrist, again, this is all in what you call context. We're all talking about here this last 3.5 years of time, the time of Jacob's trouble, or the time of the greatest distress, or the great tribulation, as Jesus said. And when that time starts, what happens? Well, Jesus in Matthew 24 says, Israel, flee. And if you remember, Ezekiel 7 said the same thing. Israel, you're going to have to flee to the mountains. And Jesus said, flee to the mountains, Israel. But we have a little bit more information about that fleeing in Revelation 12:14. It goes, but the woman, Israel, was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness to her place, that she might be nourished from the presence of the serpent who was trying to attack her in Revelation 12. And we know that that happens in where she flees for 3.5 years, because that time of Jacob's trouble, the time of the Great Tribulation, it says in like 12 different places in Revelation and the book of Daniel, it lasts 3.5 years, or 1,260 days, or 42 months. Revelation 11:2 says it very succinctly. It says the Gentiles will trample Jerusalem for 42 months. Okay, so here it says that the Antichrist, the dragon, tries to invade Israel in Revelation 12:14, and then the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly to the wilderness to her place, that she might be nourished from the presence away from the devil. So here's what I'm saying, people. In the light of today's current geopolitical reality, this makes complete sense. Let's say there was Muslim hordes and about to attack Israel, and Israel fled, just like Jesus predicted, flee to the mountains. Well, mountains can mean great nations, and the United States is a great nation, and in just common sense terms, Israel, would they flee where? Would they flee to Petra like we've all been taught? I don't think so. I think that it would be an airlift by the United States, the Eagle Nation. And I have a theory, and there's other people that have this theory too, if you want to look it up on the internet, that the Antichrist, again, urban legend like we've all been taught, alert, that the Antichrist will not rule the whole world like we've been taught. He'll only rule the Middle East in a caliphate, the whole known world at the time when all these predictions were written. And if you just do a search for will the Antichrist be worshipped by the whole world, you'll find some very interesting information. But that's what I believe. That's why I'm trying to say here that the Eagle Nation can airlift Israel to safety in the wilderness. And we were considered a wilderness a long time ago. So again, in the light of today's world, that makes much more sense than saying Israel will march up to Petra, doesn't it? I'm open to the fact that could happen. But also in Isaiah 15 through 22, in the sweep through invasion by the Antichrist, he does take over Jordan. even though it does say, Jordan, hide my outcast. I appreciate that. And so I don't have all the answers, people. All I'm saying that definitely America is the eagle nation, and that if Israel was attacked, it would be a very definite fact that who in the world would help Israel to flee? America, by the two wings of a great eagle, would help her to flee to a great mountain, America. Does that make sense? Yes, it does. It makes a whole lot of sense to me. And then it says, we're Israel, so she's flown by two wings of a great eagle. Again, Ezekiel 17, it talks about two wings of a great eagle clipping off a branch and taking it to a land of traders. And then, now back to the end of Ezekiel 17, remember we talked about how it's a definite match that Jesus is the branch, and the Ezekiel 17 is repeating that same little loop of information in Ezekiel 7 through 11, which talked about the Antichrist attacking Israel, and then it ends with Jesus Christ, the glory, coming back and standing on a mountain east of Jerusalem. And that's exactly what Zechariah 14 says. The Antichrist attacks Israel, the city flees, and then 3.5 years later, the Antichrist comes back and stands on a mountain east of Jerusalem. Now we have the same imagery here in Ezekiel 17. It says the branch comes back and stands on a high mountain. Duh! I mean, how much more clear can it be? So the branch is Jesus in Isaiah, okay? And he comes back and stands on a mountain. So you can see how my theory is proved, and my theory, as crazy as it is, that the whole prophetic Bible is talking about this last 3.5 years, or the time of Jacob's trouble, or the day of the Lord, which starts when people say peace. It's an invasion of Israel by the worst of the Gentiles, Ezekiel 7. Israel has to flee, which all these verses say, as you can see right before your eyes. And Jesus even said you have to flee to the mountains. And then after that time of great distress, or the time of Jacob's trouble, because it's a time of Jacob's trouble because Israel will be desolated, as many, many scriptures say. What happens then? Jesus Christ comes back. He stands on a mountain east of Jerusalem. And it says that in Ezekiel 17, that this branch comes back and stands on a mountain. So you can see how I'm not far afield. I'm not making something up that's just crazy like we've heard a lot of people say. This is actually in context, that America is two wings of a great eagle. They clip off a branch. The pilgrims come and start our nation, and it became a land of traders and merchants. That's very logical. Then at the end of time, the branch, remember, the branch was clipped off and brought to America, that there'll be two wings of a great eagle. The branch will come back and stand on a high mountain. Jesus Christ will come back and stand on the high mountain east of Jerusalem. So this is how Ezekiel 17, in my mind, has to be America. Isn't that amazing how they're two related? The beginning of Ezekiel 17 talks about a branch being brought to a land of traders, and then that same branch comes back and stands on a high mountain. Gee, it's pretty obvious, people, at least for all of you who aren't trained by theological seminaries, all of us trailer park Christians who, just read the Bible for what it says. And this is so amazing to me, again, how this is one of my main theories, that the same God uses the same words and phrases to describe the same events. And the same events are that the entire prophetic Bible is describing and redescribing in movie flashbacks the same time frame, which is the time of Jacob's trouble, which starts when Israel's in a false peace. Israel is invaded by the worst of the Gentiles, and the Gentile who's so bad defiles the temple. It says that in Ezekiel 7. And of course, Jesus said the Gentile who invades will cause Israel to flee, and it says that in Ezekiel 7 too. And then 3.5 years later, what happens? Jesus Christ, the glory of God, Isaiah 60 says that, the glory comes, and arise, shine, for the light has come in the darkness. The world is in darkness as Jesus Christ comes back. The sun, moon, and stars are darkened, right? So the glory of God, which is Jesus, comes back and stands on a mountain east of Jerusalem. And Zechariah 14, Jesus Christ comes back, the pierced one, and stands on a mountain east of Jerusalem. In Ezekiel 17, the clipped off branch that was clipped off and taken to a land of merchants in the wilderness, America, comes back and stands on a mountain east of Jerusalem. So it's the same, it doesn't say east of Jerusalem, but it's the same picture. It's the same metaphor. It cannot be denied. So isn't that amazing that this is possibly referring to America, and maybe it's good news that America will be a light in the darkness, even at the end of time. And it says in Isaiah, from the west, as Jesus Christ comes back, there'll be shouts of joy. So, maybe the world won't be some huge gloom and doom Orwellian fortress of darkness where, some evil president or United Nations guy rules the entire world, South America, Hawaii, Iceland. It may be that it will just be the Middle East and surrounding nations, possibly Europe. They're becoming more and more Muslim every day. And that's why, at the end of time, it says that there'll be other nations marching on the Antichrist. So no, he won't be taking over the whole world. And perhaps America will be, even if we're attacked in some fashion, be here as America, the eagle nation who airlifts Israel to safety when she's invaded by Muslim armies. And then will be a safe place for the Christian religion or the branch. And that branch will come back. It says in Isaiah 11, Isaiah 4, Isaiah 42, will come back and stand on a mountain east of Jerusalem. Now, isn't that amazing and fascinating that maybe God looks on America a little bit differently from all the gloom and doom Pharisee types that say, we have to pay for our crimes, Maybe God sees us that we've spread the gospel around the world, we've fed millions of people around the world, and we've protected the poor and the innocent nations around the world. So maybe God has a different scale of justice than the gloom and doomers who hate America, and we are not Babylon. I can tell you that 100% because Isaiah 21 says Babylon is fallen, and it talks about Babylon in the Middle East, not America. So it's good news, right? If you need any more information, you can email me at abrook8@aol.com, the number 8 and no S there. And I have some amazing information. I have outlines of Ezekiel, Isaiah, and Jeremiah that prove my theory that all they are is just repetitions of the same last 3.5 year period. Just like we saw here, God is repeating the same information to make sure we get it. And it's so funny, very famous people say Jesus Christ never comes back in the Old Testament. Well, he comes back 100 times maybe, maybe 50, okay? So anyway, this is an all new way of looking at things, but I thought you might be interested that it might be good news for America. This is Alan Brooks signing off for another New Discovery teaching.